And boom, we are live. Welcome to World Building Wednesday. This is World Building Wednesday. I am Brandon Kennedy, and joining me, as always, let him introduce himself.
I'm Shelby.
Alrighty, and today we are talking about villains. So we have just a few questions, and then hopefully today is a creation day, so we'll be sitting down and creating a villain. Shelby, do you want to take it and kind of introduce and start off the talk?
Sure. I always like watching videos from other content creators, and one of them that I catch every now and then is How to Be a Great GM. And he actually had an interesting take on how to make a villain from a picture. And so I put it forth to Brandon here to let us build in the way he did, build an interesting villain by picking a picture. And that's the video right there, as Brandon popped up. And you can actually see bringing a villain to life from a picture. What we're going to be doing is we're actually going to pick a pictures 1 through 4. Now, kind of funny story, right, Brandon? What happened to the second picture?
Alright, so Shelby submitted these pictures to me already, and I'll kind of go ahead and scroll through them early and just said, hey, we're going to go with one of these. And I already have a character in my setting that just, speaks iconically to this picture. And I was like, oh, I don't have a picture for this dude yet. I'm going to use this one that I need for another NPC, so let's exit out. So, you guys will likely be seeing this character make an appearance very soon in my live streams for those who follow the channel and watch the D&D sessions. Shelby, you'll likely see him in Group F, so...
Excellent. So, yes, we actually made a villain already without even trying, so... we actually could go home now. We're good. No, just joking.
Yeah, stream's over.
So what we're going to do is we're going to pick one of these pictures, and I think we kind of talked a little bit ahead of time. I think Brandon's favorite out of those, other than the one he's already made, that guy, is going to be this first one, and we're going to actually delve in and create a character with story and backstory just from the picture.
All right. I'm trying to get this as save it to my desktop. All right, so let's jump in here. On this page, I'll actually take and let's see, put right under here. Oh, I can't edit it. Never mind. There we go. That's fine. Okay, I'll keep up with it on pen and paper as we do stuff, and then just like before, how we did with the Vampandin. Once we're done, I'll just add all the information over to the wiki and share the link on the page. And now my puppers they heard me drop books, and now they're running around the house. Give me 1 second. Got a sheet of paper. Alright. So, do you want me to start talking about how I normally go about this process, or just using things from the video?
You know what? Let's do both. So what process, if you were making a video, or I'm sorry, if you were making a villain, what process would you use?
Okay, so, and once again, this is a just out of the ordinary strategy for me. Most of the time, I start with the culture of my region that I'm looking at, and say, all right, in this region, what type of people are they? what do they want, and how does what they want come into conflict with what the players are doing. And then through that setting and conflict colliding, that's where I find my character that is my villain. So kind of reverse engineering that with this process, where I would say, all right, where would a character like this exist in the world, or where would they come from? And then from there, what type of things would they do that, their culture has then ingrained upon them that this is something, or their upbringing or raising or society has ingrained upon them that you can do this to achieve your goals, that puts them in conflict with other characters around that region or in that area for them. So where I would begin on this, just looking at this image, the two things that become very, very, very apparent to me in as far as my setting and my world, she is a warrior, a bloodthirsty warrior of sorts, living for this battle and actually taking pleasure in it. Where that would be set in my world, there is a nation called Red Axe that is horrifically violent. As far as it is on the far corner of the world, it is the outcast area where people, where tribes from all different nations and points in the world at different points in history were pushed to this corner. All these city-states clash and collide with each other. And as from those clashing and conflicts, just, a constant amount of just violent tension is, violent conflicts are erupting in the area. So that's where I would look to place her, as far as origin and culturally, of why she is this blood-crazed maniac and where she comes from. So in the region of Red Axe, it is living for the fight, hunting for the fight, taking pleasure in destroying your enemies. That is all socially acceptable things to do. As far as now, how do I make this character a villain? What I would look to do is, in my setting personally, there are undead people in this world that are constantly hunted, and they are undead, but just because they're undead, they're not necessarily evil. They're sentient corpses who've had their soul stolen. Some nations allow these people to live in them, some nations don't. But lots of my players and groups of characters have befriended different people of this race of Terrai. That's the race that they are, and they are hunted across the world. So to put this character into conflict with those players, I would make her a bounty hunter of sorts, perhaps hunting after one of their friends or somebody in the party. And not really caring about her actions, but more so living for the fight or the kill of the moment. Flavor things, both of her weapons are bloodied. Perhaps she is a bounty hunter and she only takes contracts for dead of high profit targets. And just more mashing things into my setting as far as taking traits off of this person. There's a vanguard of these undead people that just kind of protect members of their race, and they are called the Agram Guard. They wear these skull mask on their face whenever they do any sort of hunt or campaigns or raids, just to terrify the people they're fighting. So, having, the skulls on her shoulder pads and her knee guards, would kind of be an insult to them of hey, I see what you're wearing, and, it doesn't fear me. I'll wear two of them, and just, you know, wading into conflict, are wading into combat against the Agram Guard and against, you know, these undead people, just hunting mercilessly in the desert, is where I'd look to put this character as a villain.
Well, I think that actually would be okay, as far as that goes. Now, the way the guy, I guess is his name, the guy in the video, which his name is Guy, way he does it is he basically takes a picture and makes a story with it. And I actually think that we could do what you had suggested and add a little bit more flavor to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we could get some personality from this first picture and add to it, because there are some things there. You mentioned the bloody weapons; those play a huge part in what you had envisioned for this character, and I agree with that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other things that I've noticed on here is that we can talk about this. She has some interesting armor that has like some demon. So maybe it's magic armor, right? Or why does she have demon? Is she trying to get her demons out? You know, is it something along those lines? She also has some vials. Did you notice that she has some vials on her belt? So those could play an interesting part. And if you can't really tell, I can't really tell what that is. She has something under her neck that could actually be, with all the blood and stuff, those almost look like ears to me.
Yeah, ears on a necklace, and it looks like a claw on the center.
So maybe she keeps trophies. Which could be something interesting on that. So, what do you think, Brandon? What sort of personalities could we give her with some of these pictures?
Looking at it a little further, I'm just going to keep relating things to my setting, because, you know, like, that's
that's what you should do. So
yeah. So she's got three demons on her armor. The one on her shoulder, one on her one knee, and then the other one on her calf muscle, or rather the shin on her right leg. So I would look very similar to making this some sort of, not warlock, but maybe warlock archetype. A huge thing with the culture of Red Axe in my world, the nation that I said that I would place her in, is that they actually did make contact with essentially demon lords, and started worshipping them and embracing them as, you know, otherworldly deities. And so I would look to make her sort of a warlike archetype of she's in service to maybe 3 different demon lords, each pulling for her soul or something. And maybe that goes into why she is only takes contracts for kill, or rather, you know, dead, not dead or alive. In so much as perhaps, well, the people she's hunting wouldn't have souls, but killing them could yield some sort of just magical reward for her in favor, like with these demons. Moving from there, looking at her, the potions, that was another thing that stood out to me. I would look to do something with either corruption, poison, or even purification. Of perhaps even those potions are holy water. Well, I say holy water, but are holy water from her religion of what these demons have given her. For sprinkling on like the people that she kills, or maybe specifically into the wounds, and perhaps doing so might give them a curse, yield them like as some sort of harvest to the demon when it's killed. As a sort of like a sacrifice, and then moving with.
I kind of like that idea. Like she's basically for lack of a better term, like a crusader, a holy avenger type deal, but it's not like the normal what you would think with a paladin and priest type thing. It's more of the corruption, right?
Yeah.
And like she's very ritualistic when it comes to that, where she'll like even during battle she'll like throw holy water, if you will, at them, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then from her stance, the scars on her, the blood and everything, I imagine, everybody she comes across, she would want to basically outskill in that ritualistic combat. She has a bow, she has an arrow. She could be sitting off in the distance, shooting this person, but she's up front with spear and dagger in hand. Once she finds her target, she finds the person, yells like, fight me to the death, right here. And then, if they don't and they run, that's when the bow and arrow comes into contact.
What if the three demons are actually one demon? Like a three-headed demon? I don't know if your setting has that type of thing.
No, I could definitely see it. And also the one on her right shin, I have to remember directions. The one on her right shin is the only one that looks kind of different. The two on her the one on her shoulder pad and the one on her left shin are both look similar in so much as they look like hound-like, or like some demonic beast. I'd even be willing to say it'd be some type of Cerberus, like sentient Cerberus that she could serve. One thing in my setting that is very common.
I kind of like that because that would play into the hunt. So maybe it's the hunt that she's doing for the warlock back. By fulfilling the hunt, it does something for the demon.
Yeah. One thing that's very common in my setting is when dealing with death. Death exists in a triptych of, there are three realms of essentially existence. And, you can die in either of those realms, moving between cycling between all three. Then, your experience with death, if you've killed somebody, you've lost somebody, or you have been killed yourself. The three different forms of the gatekeeper, and that constant association with death in three. I would look personally to do that with this character, as she is some twisted servant of death, or rather, she worships some twisted servant or abomination of death. The other thing that I really liked with 4th edition of D&D that they kind of took out of 5th edition is that in 4th edition there was a different god of death at the start of it, and death was a domain. That god took favor with the Raven Queen as a like wandering forgotten spirit, and had her as his consort. And then she killed him and took dominion of death, or took the domain of death, and rose to the right of godhood. And that there were all these other greater planar cosmic beings that wanted the domain of death, and that she constantly had to fend them off. And everybody was like always working against her to try and get it. They changed her origins in 5th edition. But I always like that idea of your power as a god is not, just because you're a god, but it's because you claim something that can be taken from you, and that, there are other beings, in these other planes working against the gods in the same way, so much as so to, take their station. And that this could be like one of those lesser, like, demigods that would have, a fascination with the power of death, and it's just like, all right, I need servants, go kill me some, send them to the beyond. But yeah, that's all I got to say about the.
Now, would she be on death, or would she be actually a
I would say she'd be living.
Normally. Okay.
Now the nitty-gritty of how she became who she is, I think would be very tied to my setting, and would become like different to each of us. If I was looking to, place this more in depth, and specifically into the world, where she fits into my setting and how she became like she is, I would say there's a monastery inside of a nation called Morzia in my world, and I'm gesturing to it here on the screen. That monastery is called the Great Temple of Daridel, and it basically embraces a religion called Darenthel, which is less of a religion and more of a collection of beliefs. And they say, we can't teach you anything. The only thing the only way to become, smarter, or to learn, is to go and have experiences and grow from them. And they encompass a lot of religions and beliefs inside of that temple. So I could imagine her as like a student there, and then going to have experiences in perhaps Red Axe, and coming into like a circle of Gendenthel, which is a very dark religion in my world that would, commune with otherworldly demons, embracing it, and then even so much among them of being an outcast, of like they're very secretive, and her open embrace of it, of like, this isn't something to fear, this is something to embrace, this is the thrill, this is the hunt for, our great demonic demigod dog, that, our demigod hound that we need to empower. There's no hiding, there's only hunting, would be more so her story, and then she would even be an outcast among them of just her approach to things. There was something else I wanted to say, something about the image triggered something in my mind, but I might have talked past it and forgotten it, so I'll come back to it if I remember.
One of the things I was thinking is like the black mark, the camouflage, if you will, over her eyes. I would actually think that that is something to do with the ritual, that it's actually a permanent mark on her.
Yes. I like that you pointed that out. My brain's going in different directions. More
Okay,
so,
what do you think?
So once again, dealing with death. In my world, there was a demigod. Her name was Oka, and she didn't understand the depth of her powers, of how like powerful they were from being a demigod, and she just witnessed, loved ones and people she was trying to protect around her dying, and she accessed every, like hysterical strength of, when your adrenaline's pumping, all your limiters are turned off, and accessed every ounce of her power and just ripped a hole in the fabric of reality. When that happened, the gatekeeper, the goddess of death, sought her out and was like, hey, look, you can't do this anymore. You have to go. I'm going to kill you. Because this is unacceptable. She made a deal with the gatekeeper, trading her eyes, or trading her sight to the gatekeeper in return for her life. And so the gatekeeper, that is a trophy of hers. She, one of the things is she holds the eyes of a demigod. I could see this in this ritual, this religion, of painting over your eyes and just having that emphasis on them as an open defiance of the gatekeeper, and it's I will tear reality apart if I want to, and there is nothing you can do, or rather there's no trade you can make. I have my eyes, I have my sight, they're open. And that would be a very symbolic thing, within that fringe culture.
I like it.
Oh, the other thing I was going to say. Oh, I want to preface this again, too, for anybody, preparing for a campaign. This is a fun exercise to get your brain moving, but I would 100% say you always craft your villain around your players, and not vice versa. So this is a fun exercise, but I don't know how much I would employ it. Just so much so that, this could be creating content that, never gets seen, which is 80% of a dungeon master's life.
I was fixing to say that's what I do every time I put paper to pen there.
Yeah, and I think all that's left would be the random rolls that I would do for her of when her birthday is, giving her a name, her family, and then just based on how those rolls come out would be just tiny character details, and I'd look for the nuance. I'd look for the nuance of her character, of if her family is still alive, of how would she treat them. As a sadistic maniac, I wouldn't lean into any heavy trope of oh yeah, she killed and sacrificed them, of maybe she has a very loving, tender relationship with her family, and then how all of those things could affect the character we created in meaningful ways.
Well, let's actually do that. Let's roll those real fast.
Alrighty. So there are 10 months in my world. So the first thing I always do is roll a d10, and see what month they were born in. So I have to pull up my month chart I rolled a 3. So they were born, and that's fitting. They were born in the month of Warrior, under the constellation of Mealy. And it is in the sun season, which is the season of growing daylight. So in our world, you'd think of that as like late January to late July of any time, you know, before the summer solstice, of as long as days are getting longer and longer and longer. So she was born in Warrior, and then I roll a D40 on an electronic website. I don't own a D40, so I'm going to roll 2 D20 because there are 40 days in each month in my world, and I rolled a 14. So she was born on the 14th of Warrior. Why this is important to me is because there's something in my world, there's telltale signs of people's birth and like what the goddess of creation intends for them. So people with certain features can only be born in certain times of the year. So a lot of the times I'll make sure, you know, characters fall into those times of the year just to, like, if they have any defining features. She doesn't herself, so that's fine. But then also I have holidays in my world. So the other thing I look for is if anybody's born on any important holiday, then how that would then, you know, like affect them being raised. So the 14th is also 4th day. And yeah, so she's not born on any major holidays. That's fine. The next thing I do is if she has any family, and how I would do that is evens. Her mother is still alive. Odds. Evens. Mother's still alive. Odds she's dead. Odds she's dead. Evens. The father's still alive. Odds he's dead. Odds or evens. The father is alive. So she has a living father. And then I will roll a d4 for siblings, depending on the race. And she has 2 siblings. So same thing I'll do with them. I'll roll evens or odds if they're alive or dead. So we said evens, they're alive. Odds, they're dead. Odds, one's dead, and one is alive. So dead mother and a dead sibling. And then same thing, evens, odds, male or female. So the dead sibling is a female, and the living sibling is a 2 sisters. So there were it was a 3-daughter family. Mother is dead, 1 sister is dead, and you know her and her last remaining sister are alive. And her father's still alive. The other thing that I do is I look at my alignment chart, and I will roll them in alignment too. Because just, you know, you can get interesting villains from every single alignment. You know, lawful good people can do do some horrible things just within the constraints of the law for the good of society. 1 is chaotic, and 5 is evil. That is very fitting. So chaotic, evil, with a living sister and a living brother. And so now I would look to say, all right, what religion do those other family members follow? And then that might influence how they feel about her. So the family follows a religion in my world of the Given Wills, which is the polar opposite of her religion. And with that, she might be estranged from her family. So much so that maybe she went on this path of murder and bloodlust after losing her mother and other sister, and perhaps losing faith.
Maybe she's the cause of her mother and sister's death.
Oh yeah, that could be it too. You know, she has the ears on her necklace. Maybe those are her mother and sister's ears.
Ooh, I like it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. So here's a thought. So those are her mother's and sister's ears. Perhaps she traded them to these to the demonic you know, dog that she serves, and might have been either could have been tricked into it, could have openly embraced it, but is like going on doing what she's doing in the hopes to, you know, become like the third, or maybe, you know, maybe the mother and the sister were also involved in this like ritual or this cult or her exploration, and she killed them, you know, to send them into like the afterlife to, you know, be with the master, and eventually, you know, her desires to join. I'm thinking that, you know, she still talks to these ears that she has.
Yeah, I actually see her, like, almost even during combat, she'll, like, take the necklace and whisper into the ears. Like, she's telling them secrets, you know, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this. Like, I really like that imagery.
I think I would also definitely go with this character as very cursed from the ritual she's in. And the curses would have benefits and drawbacks to them. One thing that I would say is that that she can use an action to perceive through the senses of the ears. And so much so that if, you know, she's like constantly hunting the party and like they're hiding from her, she could hide these ears in places that, you know, they might not notice. And, you know, just give like this very spooky feel of just like this maniacal lady nonstop coming after you, and you have no idea how she's tracking you.
I like it. I like it. Maybe they're like a warlock's book tome, in that they always come back to her.
Oh yeah, after a short rest. The next thing I'd look for is her age. So, you know, I take the base age out of the base age for adventurers from the Pathfinder suggestion, and put a human at 16 years, and then roll 3d10 and add to it from there. So 4, 4, 3, that's 8, 24, 27 years old. And the next thing I'd look for is, when did all of this start? And then align that with events in my world. So 2 months ago in game time in my world, or I'm sorry, yeah, 2 months ago. So the 9th month of 1013 Ascended Era was when the Crimson Crusades and the nation of Red Axe openly embraced the religion of Gendenfell, and like they started summoning demons, killing diplomats, killing, you know, peaceful emissaries, killing missionaries, and all of those things within the country. Was about 2 months ago. So I'm going to roll, since she's 27, I'm gonna roll 3 and she seems pretty skilled at what she does. I'm gonna roll 3d4 for how long, you know, she's been a maniac, just to continue fitting her into the world. And that's just an arbitrary number of d4 that I've chosen. So 3 plus 4 is 7, plus 2 is 9 years. So at the age of 18 was when she was brought into this cult, which kind of makes sense for, so she was studying at Daridel. About when, you know, somebody is of maturity is when they say, hey, go out and travel the world and then come back to the monastery and, you know, share what you've learned. So 18 would be about the time that she went out and, you know, found a circle of Gindenthal. And then, you know, would promptly be kicked out of it. 3 years later, because I'll just use these numbers I rolled of, like, important milestones in her life. 3 years later, she would be kicked out of it. 2 years later, she would probably have came back and killed her mother and sister. 4 years later, 4 years later, would probably just be the time she's been like roaming around and proving her skill. Or maybe I'll replace that. So, nope, I like that as it stands. So 18, she, oh gosh, I forgot I'm sitting here in the dark. Sorry guys. 18, she leaves the monastery, travels the world, and finds a cult of Gindenthal. After being with them for 3 years, she's kicked out because she's too much of a fanatic. And this is how I'm going to do it instead. 2 years after she's kicked out, she contacts this demigod, demonic dog, and becomes a servant to it. And so that would put her at 21 is when she is kicked out. 23, she becomes a servant of this three-headed dog. And 4 years later, she kills her mother and sister at 27. How I'd look to introduce her to the party is probably starting with since she's just a like lone person hunting people, I'd probably start it off with a small investigation. Like, you know, these two bodies are found, nobody knows who they belong to and what happens, and eventually lead the party to, you know, investigating the family and, you know, the father and the living daughter who would be like, oh yeah, we haven't seen our sister in years, we lost contact with her when she, you know, left Gindenthal. And then, of course, the woman showing up to reclaim the ears of the two bodies would be like the villain introduction if I was doing that.
All right. I think we're close to the end of our time frame.
Okay.
Brennan, do you want to leave some inspiration? Like, how did you feel about creating this character this way?
And I told you at the start of this, I'm going to try and be as positive as I can. It's a very fun mental exercise, but nothing that I would ever normally do for, like, while I have a party all ready together, because I would be looking to, you know, craft my villains around what's interesting in the party and not bend the party towards, you know, what I think is interesting. That said, it's, you know, a nice thing to get your mind moving on a subject and get, like, ready and get inspired in something. And I would highly suggest, like, this was fun. I highly suggest sitting down and trying it sometime. And then this is something I'm going to put in my pocket and just have in the back burner of just like, oh, if anybody ever, like, comes to this region, hey, here's this crazy lady.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's all I have for today. Is there anything else, Brandon?
No, that's everything for me. I'm getting phone calls now. I think my father might be watching this and it's just like, what are you doing making cultists? But I will say thank you for watching. Thank you for the people who donate to the Patreon for making this possible. Yeah, next week is if we're alternating between creating and Q&As. Next week going to be a Q&A.
Yes, I haven't come up with the question yet, so
we'll find
sure.
a good subject. Or you could even reverse it, and I can ask you a couple questions of like maybe things that you might feel most people struggle with world building. We'll figure it out. All right.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's pretty much. You know what? That's gonna be the motto of this series. We'll figure it out together.
That's right.